Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
The lesson of Trump: there's only one communications director. Donald Trump just lost his fifth White House communications director in his 13-month presidency, but the real communications chief remains the president himself. From Twitter broadsides to off-the-cuff comments during official events, Trump prefers to be his own messenger, and the White House communications operation had become increasingly marginalized, even before Hope Hicks announced her resignation Wednesday. The latest tumult roiling the communications operation underscored an enduring reality: serving a president who considers himself his own best spokesman has always proved a challenge for Trump's team. Trump himself has said his own spokespeople cannot necessarily be trusted to deliver accurate information, a declaration he made in the wake of the shifting explanations for firing FBI Director James Comey. In the whirl of Trump's Washington, only Trump can keep track of his shifting positions, changing allegiances and on and off feuds. That reality leaves much of the White House in a constant state of catch-up and allows the president to lurch from crisis to crisis, often of his own making. And it has at times threatened his agenda, when a dashed-off tweet can jeopardize a vote or derail a planned meeting. White House officials see it as the simple reality of serving an untraditional president who plays by his own rules and expects everyone around him to follow him, no matter how circuitous the path. The president was elected to do things differently, and that starts with communicating directly with the American people outside the media filter, Principal Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah said. The best strategy for the press office is to embrace his social media and direct engagement with the press. Before the Hicks announcement Wednesday, the White House abruptly canceled a planned news briefing, citing Trump's decision to broadcast his meeting with legislators on gun control, the third time in the past week he's televised himself at work on the issue. The move, coming after Press Secretary Sarah Sanders returned to the podium this week after a brief hiatus, underscored an uncomfortable new reality for the White House press office and communications team. In Trump's White House, only the president speaks for himself. Gone are the days of Sean Spicer and Anthony Scaramucci dominating headlines. Instead, the president himself is carving out a presidential version of the role he once played as host of The Apprentice, emceeing hour-long specials on policymaking. Even longer gone are the days when a White House spokesperson could be seen as speaking for the president. In a traditional White House, the press shop is one of the primary organs by which the president disseminates his message. In this White House, it is at times unclear whether the press office even knows what the president's message is. I don't think anyone outside of really Hope Hicks in the comms shop really knows what the president is thinking or how he feels on a certain issue, said a former Trump White House official. He has a penchant for saying one thing to one person and then going in a completely different direction like 2 hours later. That habit leaves the communications staff in an unenviable position. The president routinely puts his communications staff in an impossible position, said Ryan Williams, a former spokesman for GOP nominee Mitt Romney during the 2012 campaign. You cannot do your job as a communications professional if you are not given accurate and complete information. Hicks' unique status: she can be in any meeting she wants to be in, quipped one senior administration official, seemed to come at the expense of her official role as communications director. Daily communications meetings tend to be run by Sanders and her deputy, Shah. Along with Sanders and Shah, Mercedes Schlapp, the director of strategic communications, tends to cover the day-to-day responsibilities that would usually fall to the communications director. While Hope's biggest strength might not be the day-to-day managing of the communications staff, she gets the president's voice better than just about anyone in the White House, and that makes her irreplaceable, said one person close to the White House. Now Hicks is on her way to the exit, leaving the communications office once more without a head. She was not a traditional communications director, said one official, but she was the type of communications director this White House required, spending lots of time with Trump, advising him and being constantly at his side. The degree to which the press shop is out of the loop was on glaring display in recent weeks as the White House struggled to explain how former Staff Secretary Rob Porter maintained an interim security clearance even after accusations of spousal abuse. The flailing and shifting responses over that situation eventually led Shaw to declare it's fair to say that we all could have done better over the last few hours, or last few days in dealing with this situation. A few days later, Chief of Staff John Kelly was asked by the Wall Street Journal whether the situation should have been handled differently and responded, "No. It was all done right," he added. That afternoon, Sanders was again bombarded with questions about the White House's handling of the controversy. For a spokesperson who is rarely on the defensive, the briefing that day resulted in a rare moment of candor. "I can only give you the best information that I have," Sanders said at one point. The episode ended in something of a retreat, with a number of days without briefings and Sanders' trip to the Winter Olympics in South Korea. And it is unclear, now that Sanders has returned, how much damage the Porter episode did. It's fair to say that President Trump makes what would already be a very difficult job, speaking on his behalf, all but impossible because of his refusal to consistently speak to and tell the truth to the people that speak for him, said Josh Earnest, a former press secretary for President Barack Obama. Incomplete or inaccurate information appears to be an ongoing challenge of the operation. That point was highlighted Tuesday when Hicks told a House committee she sometimes tells white lies on the president's behalf, according to the New York Times. One White House official stressed that the phenomenon is not unique to the press office. "I think that a lot of shops in the White House, from the NSC to the Legislative Affairs to other offices, are often in a similar boat," the official said. "From tweets to specific announcements, sometimes the president just does it. And the relevant policy or national security or legislative offices aren't always read in." Officials around Trump have long been used to the boss habit of veering off topic, picking unnecessary fights and jumping between positions. But none have to face the various contradictions and controversies day in and day out like the communications shop, which is regularly a target for blame inside the West Wing, especially in the wake of the Porter fiasco. "My experience is that ultimately the effectiveness of the communications operation will only go as far as the president will support them, which is to say the people who are speaking on his behalf can only effectively advocate for him if he is telling them the truth or even speaking to them at all," Ernest said. "It's his reluctance to ensure that his press team is accurately communicating his thoughts and perspective that has undermined their ability to effectively advocate for him. But that is no one's fault but the president's." Trump himself has all but dismissed the credibility of his communications team. "As a very active president with lots of things happening, it is not possible for my surrogates to stand at podium with perfect accuracy," Trump wrote on Twitter last May. "Maybe the best thing to do would be to cancel all future press briefings and hand out written responses for the sake of accuracy." Trump has taken to numerous other avenues to get out his message. There's his Twitter account, of course. There are trips to and from Marine One, when he often stops to take questions shouted over the roar of the helicopter. There's the occasional press conference with foreign leaders. And, in an increasingly frequent phenomenon, there's long, winding pulse praise, in which Trump regales the press, usually while surrounded by a group of cabinet officials, or members of Congress or other distinguished guests, with his thoughts on the news of the day. That happened again on Monday, when Trump spoke at length during a meeting with the bipartisan group of governors. The briefing that day was something of an afterthought. If the White House press corps concedes that the only way they can get reliable information is by talking directly to the President of the United States, said Ernest, that will be a significant setback for transparency and accountability, the very things that the White House press corps is supposed to fight for. Kushner shifts to 2020 campaign talk amid clearance downgrade. Jared Kushner showed up for work at the White House on Wednesday and acted like everything was normal. President Donald Trump's son-in-law and advisor attended the daily senior staff meeting, where he launched into a discussion about Trump's 2020 re-election bid, according to an administration official. He was in the meeting despite his recent security clearance downgrade, first reported Tuesday by Politico, and a Washington Post story that detailed discussions among foreign officials about using Kushner's tangled business relationships to manipulate him. For more than a year, Kushner has snuffed out any whiff of insurrection against him, outlasting a stream of White House aides, from former chief strategist Steve Bannon to former chief of staff Reince Priebus, who had tried to take him down or minimize his role in his father-in-law's administration. Now, he is in an increasingly tenuous position, restricted in his ability to view information and limited in his duties, and there is growing speculation about his future in the White House. The resignation of White House Communications Director Hope Hicks, a longtime aide who has served as a trusted confidant to both Kushner and his wife, Ivanka Trump, as well as to the president, is another blow to the couple, whose easy access to the Oval Office has been curtailed by Chief of Staff John Kelly. Amid the furor, Trump's closest allies have begun defending Kushner, insisting that his clearance downgrade won't prevent him from doing his job. "I think if the president feels like Jared is able and loyal and willing, he absolutely should keep him on the team, and I encourage Jared to stay just as long as he has the energy and the dedication to serve," said American Conservative Union Chairman Matt Schlapp, who regularly talks to the president. But those in the administration who have long resented Kushner are quietly experiencing some schadenfreude over the firestorm. Let's not forget the early, eye-rolling days when the national security and foreign policy trio was of Reince, Bannon and Jared, who have now been replaced by Kelly, McMaster, Mattis, and Tillerson, an administration official told Politico. This person added that these days, people whose first title does not begin with secretary, general or director are at a disadvantage when it comes to national security and foreign policy. Kushner's recent focus on the 2020 election has led some in the White House to wonder whether he'll eventually transition out of the West Wing to become an advisor to his father-in-law's re-election bid. Trump's newly announced campaign manager, Brad Parscale, is a close ally of Kushner's, and the two men speak on the phone regularly. Kushner has seen his close circle of allies shrink in recent weeks with the departure of Reed Cordish, a staffer in Kushner's Office of American Innovation, and the decision by spokesman Josh Raphael, a key defender of Kushner and his wife, to leave the administration in the coming months. People close to Kushner do not expect him to make a sudden departure, unless more damaging news stories make his continued presence in the White House untenable. If he does leave, he's expected to do so on his own terms, administration officials said. Even before this week, Kushner had become a regular subject of gossip in the White House as special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election heats up. For weeks, some aides have been reluctant to speak freely in front of Kushner because they see him as a potential target of Mueller's probe, according to the administration official. Kushner's moment under the microscope has coincided with White House Chief of Staff John Kelly's rise. Since joining the White House in July, Kelly has sought to limit access to Trump and eliminate any perceived special treatment that the president might give to favored aides. Kelly has sometimes disagreed with Kushner, while Kushner, for his part, has sometimes resisted Kelly's efforts to limit his access. But the White House insists that the two men have a good relationship, pointing to an unusual statement Kelly issued last week voicing confidence in Kushner. "As I told Jared days ago, I have full confidence in his ability to continue performing his duties in his foreign policy portfolio, including overseeing our Israeli-Palestinian peace effort and serving as an integral part of our relationship with Mexico," Kelly said in the statement. A White House spokesman declined to comment further. While administration officials insist the backstabbing that characterized Trump's first few months in office has died down, they acknowledge that powerful allies are essential to survival in this administration. As a result, Kelly is looking to shore up his power base in the White House. The retired Marine general has started looking outside the White House for a principal deputy chief of staff, a position he hasn't been able to fill since his former number 2, Kirstjen Nielsen, was confirmed to replace him as Secretary of Homeland Security in December, according to two people familiar with his plans. Most of the major figures in the Trump White House came to the West Wing surrounded by loyalists, Bannon with like-minded colleagues from Breitbart, Priebus with a team from the Republican National Committee, and Kushner and Ivanka Trump with their own communications aide. Kelly arrived with a much smaller circle, composed principally of Nielsen and his former military aide, Zach Fuentes, and he has struggled to build it back up since Nielsen's departure in early December. Kelly's decision to look outside the White House for a deputy comes after a failed attempt to replace Nielsen with somebody already serving in the administration. He told associates he was disappointed in the performance of Jim Carroll, an administration lawyer who joined the West Wing as deputy chief of staff in December. The White House nominated Carroll as national drug czar earlier this month. The churn in Kelly's office is a reflection of two persistent challenges for the Trump administration: retaining the talent it has and replacing valued aides as they depart or move to fill more senior positions. The Chief of Staff is also expected to look for a Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, a step toward reinstating a role that's been key in previous White Houses but that the Trump administration has never filled. The former White House Staff Secretary, Rob Porter, who left the administration earlier this month after two ex-wives accused him of domestic abuse, was at one point a candidate for that position. Nielsen served in the White House as Kelly's no-nonsense enforcer and was integral to his attempt to impose discipline on the unruly White House that he inherited. Without trusted deputies, he has had more difficulty managing the White House. The Porter scandal made clear that the order he has brought to the White House has not been cost-free, as many presidential aides were quick to use it as an opportunity to undermine him. Even so, he has succeeded where others, including Bannon and Priebus, failed, in going up against Jared Kushner and, at least for now, winning. Eliana Johnson contributed to this report. Trump bill combining concealed carry and gun background checks will never pass. President Donald Trump on Wednesday cast doubt on the political prospects for expanding concealed carry gun laws, telling a bipartisan group of lawmakers that including the gun lobby priority in legislation related to background checks would sink it in Congress. Representative Steve Scalise, R-Law, the House Majority Whip, spoke up during a White House meeting in favor of a House Republican plan that combines a background check measure with a provision that would make concealed carry permits valid across state lines. But the president dismissed the idea, saying it'll never pass. Trump convened the meeting to discuss ways to prevent attacks like the February 14 school shooting in Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 people. The House already passed the combined legislation, but its chances are poor in the Senate due to Democrats' opposition. Scalise had supported passage of the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act last year. If you look at the concealed carry population, these are people by and large who are helping us stop crime, so I hope that that's not immediately dismissed because there is a lot of talk to just putting that on the side, he said on Wednesday. Scalise was critically wounded in a shooting during a practice for the congressional baseball game last summer. Though Trump didn't completely rule out Scalise's proposal, he suggested it be passed as a separate bill. I think that maybe that bill will someday pass, but it should pass as separate, the president said. If you're gonna put concealed carry between states in this bill, we're talking about a whole new ball game. And I'm with you, but let it be a separate bill. If you add concealed carry to this, you'll never get it passed.